Hello and welcome back to the dotCMS Content Contributor course. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about importing content. And before we start importing content into dotCMS using a couple of different content types, let's take a look at the dotCMS documentation site and just do a quick search for importing content. I want to share with you in the links below this video the documentation so that you can take a look at the finer details of importing content yourself. So there's importing content documentation, importing related content, and importing multilingual content. And we're going to do all three of those in this example. So going back to a local dotCMS installation that I have installed here, we're going to first import an employee content type. Now, if you're going to import any content type, and you literally can import any content type here, you just choose the content type from the Content Search Manager, and then you choose the drop-down arrow next to Add New Content. And there is this Import Content feature. But it might behoove you to first export that same content type into a CSV file and take a look at the sample file that is there, and it has all of the fields that would be required to upload that type of content. Or you can simply select import content for that content type, and you can switch the content type here as well, and then download a CSV file sample that will give you all of the fields that you need to successfully import this type of content. I've already got a sample CSV file ready to import, so let's take a look at that CSV file real quick. Okay, so here I've got the sample CSV file that I am going to import, and the first thing I did was just simply export the employee content type so I could take a look at the fields that were required. So here the host and folder field simply requires that you provide the ID for the host that you are going to import to. And let me show you where that is if you do have a host or folder field on your content type. So switching back over to Chrome, if we look at the site browser, if you're unsure about what the ID is of your own host that you're trying to submit content to, or folder, you can actually upload and save content to a host that you have permissions to save content to, or a particular folder. If we looked at this training directory here, if we edited this, then the identifier is right here. You can just copy and paste it right into your import CSV file. Or you could simply edit the site, look at the history tab on the site, and then copy that identifier to identify the host that you're going to upload to. Going back to our import file, there is a gender field here, there is a first name field, a last name field, and all I did was use the same headers that the export file had, and then I just supplied the values here. So I've got some investors here, I'm supplying a job title, whether they're senior management or not, and the phone numbers using the validation format that I saw on the phone number fields in the content, an email, and a fax number. So we're going to go ahead and import this real quick. Okay, so now we're going to try to import that CSV file by clicking on the down arrow next to Add New Content and Import Content, and we'll go ahead and choose that file. So we choose that file, and I've got this employee import file here. I'm going to open it, and then wherever you click Go to Preview, it gives you a sample analysis of the CSV file. So the first thing we read in the summary is 10 headers match, these will be imported, 6 lines of data were read, attempting to create 6 contentlets, check below for errors affecting input, and then it gives you warnings about key fields. No key fields were chosen, so this could result in duplicated content if we have content in our CSV file that replicates content that already exists in the repository. There were no errors found in the file. Now, what does this mean about key fields? Let me cancel and let's come back here to the employee import and take a look at these fields again. Key fields are the things that you want to key on to update existing content in case your CSV file has employee information that might be a duplicate of something already in the system. So if we wanted to make sure that it was the same exact employee and that we do update in case there are repeats of existing employees inside of our CSV file, what we could do is we could combine. Now obviously if we did first name only as a key field, there might be several people with the same first name, so that would not be a sufficient key field. It would not result in only one matching result, and it could give us erroneous updates. If we did first name and last name, that even still could be the same. But if we did first name, last name, and a field like email, then we're pretty much 99.9% sure no one is going to have the same first name, last name, and email unless there's some really bad error in our business practices. So we could use that as key fields, but I've got brand new employees that I know I'm importing, so I don't need to use any of those key fields, but I could to make sure that I update it instead of actually creating all new contentlets. So let's go ahead and choose that file again. Open and go to our preview, which once again shows no errors, and import our content. It does say in case you have 100,000 employees or records that you're importing, it may take a while, but we've only got 6, so it's going to be very, very short, and it's already done. So I just can click do another import or done importing, and then I go back, and now I can see all of my 6 employees were successfully uploaded here, and they are saved as draft status. To publish all of them, all I would have to do is click on these fields here. I could go ahead and click on gender, select all of them, or I could just select those 6 and then simply publish the content, and all of those files are now published. So that is the way to do a simple import of content. Now, like I said, when we looked at the documentation links, you can also import and relate content to another content type at the same time. We've got here another content type called department, which these departments actually have an unrequired relationship to the employees. So if we take a look at management, something like that, and we click on relationships, there's already some employees here which are managers, and they're related to the employee content type. And there is a relationship here that you can see right on your content. Whenever you look at the relationships, there is a department-employee relationship between those two content types. So what you can do in your CSV file is that you can actually put the name of that relationship, and then you can put in a query that will actually find the right, in this case we're going to import employees again, and we're going to relate them to the proper department that they belong in. So taking a look at our departments, it's really easy to find the right department because we've got these little department numbers here. So we can actually just click on here, paste that department number, and now we know in our Content Search Manager we've only got one department that we want to try and relate an employee to. How do we actually attach a query to that and relate the employees we're importing to that department? You can click the down arrow next to the search button and click Show Query, and it gives you right here a query you can copy and paste into your CSV file. Now it's got a few extra things like language ID, whether it's published or unpublished, and working tree. You can instantly kind of delete those as long as you're keyed on an actual department number or a field that you know is unique and going to give you the result. And you are, if you're just working with simply one site, you don't have multiple sites, then you don't have to worry about the identifiers for the different sites, and you could just use just this part, which is your content type and your department number. So that's what I've reduced mine down to in my CSV file. So I've already formed that here in my CSV file. So if we look, I copied and pasted that relationship name, department-employee, and the importer is smart enough to pick up relationship names and examine them and find out if there's a relationship. And then we can see here there's just content type, department, and department number, and I've picked a few different departments. I'm going to relate everything that says 123 123. That's management. That corresponds to whether they're senior managers or not. And then the rest I'm relating to a different department, and you can see there's a different department number here. So everything else is exactly the same as the first import we did, and then this is the one column that's going to relate the employees to the proper departments that they belong in as I import them. So if we look back at our employees, and we look at one of those employees we imported before. Let's look at Tina Sharkey here. And if we click on relationships, there's a couple of different relationships. There's a relationship department to employee, and there's parent location to child employee. And you can do manual relationships and search for the right department and search for the department by department number and find them this way and relate them manually, but we want our CSV file to do that manually. So we're going to delete this, we're going to cancel this, and we're going to relate all of those same 6 employees that we uploaded previously. We're going to update these records using the key fields, and we're going to add that relationship for all of them. So I'm going to go back to the importer, and here I'm going to this time choose first name, last name, and email. if I didn't, now that those employees already exist in the system, if I didn't use any key fields, then we would end up with duplicates of those same 6 that we just imported. So I'm going to choose a different file this time. This time I'm going to choose the one to import with relationships, and I've just got that one extra column that I just showed you on it. Go to preview, and then it says here a warning. There are no errors, but it says a warning. But look at what the warning is saying. It's just asking you to pay attention to the number that's right here. It says in line number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, the key fields chosen match one existing piece of content. More than one match suggests that the keys are not properly unique, but it's okay because here we're only matching one piece of existing content each time. Now pay attention wherever you see that warning. If it says 2 or more here, then yes, the warning is telling you that your key fields are insufficient. You're not finding unique one-to-one matches between an individual record that you're trying to upload and an existing piece of content. So then you'd have to, find a better combination of key fields to use to really identify each employee individually. So we're going to import this content. And after we import this, then we're going to take a look at the relationships fields on those employees. So I'm done importing. Now each of these employees here has been updated. I'm going to publish that change because I would want my live pages to display the employee and their new relationships. And then we'll take a look at that same new employee that we looked at earlier that didn't have any relationships, and here she's got the proper management relationship. And if we look at any of the other employees, their relationships to their department is also there. So that is how to import with relationships using that relationship column, and everything you need to be able to place that relationship is on the piece of content itself or here supplied to you in the content search manager. Whenever you're searching for that content, you can just use that little show query down there and then copy the Lucene query to the corresponding department that matches your search. In this case, the unique identifier is the right way to find the exact department and then copy that query into your CSV file. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how to import multilingual content. So here I'm going to go to a different type of content, and that is news. Okay, so in this news content type, you can see that there's only one piece of news that has been translated into the secondary language, which is Spanish. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take these same 4 news articles right here, and I'm going to import a Spanish language version of them. Now, to do that, you need to be able to somehow identify if you're updating existing content and you're creating a new multilingual version of that piece of content, then you're going to need to supply the identifiers for these pieces of content. At least that's the best way to do this so that you can identify exactly the piece of content you're updating. And if you want to find the identifier for any piece of content, all you have to do is export the content, and it gives you this identifier that is right here in an individual column for each of the matching pieces of content. So if we just do that real quick, we do a quick export of the content, and then we take a look at that CSV file, we can then see here it gives us that identifier column. So then I can go ahead and take that identifier column, find the pieces of news content that I want to update, and then just simply translate them. And we don't need this language and country code unless we're actually doing a multiple language file upload, which I'll cover with you in just a second. But I'm just going to import Spanish. I'm only going to do 4 articles to keep it simple, but it's got all of the required fields here that I need to be able to upload that content. So let's once again take a look at the importer. And if we look at import content on this particular content type, and it's already selected news, instead of English this time we're going to choose Spanish. Now, like I said, if you were going to do a multilingual file upload, then you would use those language columns that's in the documentation. But I'm just going to choose that I'm uploading the Spanish versions of some of those content. I'll choose Spanish, and I don't need to use key fields because my CSV file, which I'm going to show you in a second, has that identifier column. If a CSV file has a identifier column, it will use those exact identifiers to match the exact content and update them. So that's why you need to make sure that you're choosing a different language version. You don't want to update using the identifier the English version of your content with your Spanish translations, right? That wouldn't be good. We want to create a new Spanish version of that same piece of content. So looking at the CSV file that we're about to upload, let's take a look at that real quick by going to Excel. Here is the news content upload file that I'm going to use.
Here you can see that identifier column. So this is my key field, and it will match exactly those identifiers and update them with the Spanish version of the content. I've translated all of my news articles, so I've got Spanish titles, Spanish URL titles, which that's important because you want it to be a unique URL title to be able to reach the detail page for that article, right? URL titles should be unique because they're the actual page URL that's going to reach, and that needs to be different in between the different languages, right? And then I've translated my story and my lead and my caption and everything like that. So I think I didn't translate my caption, but it's good enough. So now we're going to import this Spanish language version of this news. So let's go back to our importer here, make sure that our Spanish language is chosen. Don't need key fields because we have the identifier field, and we're going to choose that news content CSV file. Go to our preview and make sure that everything is okay. There was an identifier field found, and that tells you it's going to ignore any other key fields that you've chosen. It's going to use that identifier field only, and 12 headers were found that match file on our content type fields. That's fine. 4 lines of data were read. We're going to create 4 new contentlets. Perfect. And there's no real warnings except that there was no key fields chosen, but there's an identifier column, so that's sufficient. And not all content type fields match file headers. Some fields could be left empty. Sometimes that'll appeal if you have a space or anything in an extra column, but we're going to ignore that because no errors were found in our file. That's fine. And we're going to import our content. So we're done importing. We're going to go back again to that content. And here we can see we've imported those 4 pieces of content. Now, these 4 pieces of content are simply the same piece of content here in the English version. We are, looking at all language versions here. But if we go into the gas price roller coaster, we will see that its Spanish version is here, this one right here. So I can click on gas price roller coaster, switch over to the Spanish version, and see that Spanish version, it's the same piece of content. And if you look at the history, then we can actually see both versions here, the Spanish version, which is merely saved, and the English version, which has both a saved and published version. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and save and publish this Spanish version that we're right now editing, and make that live or available live on our site as well. So we'll just click save and publish, and that publishes that one piece of content, and we can select the rest of the 3 and just simply click on publish here and do it in bulk, or we could click on the complete headline, select all of the contentlets, and publish in bulk as well. So in summary, we have taken a look at how to import regular content, import content with relationships, and import multilingual content. If you need more information, simply take a look on our documentation site and search for importing content, or look at our multilingual content section for more information. I hope it was helpful, and we will see you in the next content contributor lesson.